Hello again. This is part two of a two-part lecture on research methods for Mr. Conley's class. Let's get to it. This will definitely not be a very long video. So, experimental methods, like I mentioned before. Before I get into it, make sure you do watch the first video. This will make this video make a lot more sense. So make sure you watch part one of two before watching this video, part two of two. So anyway, the experimental method is arguably, one of the best methods we have out there. Now, it's not perfect for every subject, for every research question, or every hypothesis, but in general, it's one of the best tools we have in our toolbox, if that makes sense. So there's a lot of parts to an experimental method, which is why I'm making this a separate video. So please follow along as best you can and rewind and play back and rewatch this video as many times as you need to until you get these vocabulary words and these ideas. Okay, so every experimental method, every experiment has two groups, an experimental group and a control group. Like a correlation, there are two variables being measured or being studied. So with the experimental group, they have what's called the independent variable. I'll explain what that is a little later. And there's a control group, and so this is a group of subjects or participants that are not subjected to the independent variable. So, for example, my research question was, does cheeseburgers make people happier? And my tentative explanation, my hypothesis was the meat and cheese in a cheeseburger makes people happier. So the independent variable here would be meat and cheese. And the dependent variable, which is not mentioned here but I'll mention later, is happiness. So with the experimental group, I would give them cheeseburgers. So I would give them the independent variable. But for the control group, I would not give them the independent variable. So I might give them like a veggie burger, or I might give them a salad, something without meat or cheese. And this control group may also get a placebo treatment. So, for example, I might give a vegan burger with a vegan meat patty and vegan cheese that is so close to the real thing that most people won't notice. And this helps to control for confounding variables. So, for example, you compare a salad to a cheeseburger, that's not a fair comparison. That's apples and oranges. But if you compare a vegan burger to a regular burger, you have a much stronger comparison. Now, random assignment. This is very crucial to an experiment. You must randomly assign people to either the experimental group or the control group. This helps control bias, minimizes it, and also controls for confounding variables. So when we say confounding, we mean extraneous, interfering, other variables that might be causing happiness. So, for example, someone's beliefs about being healthy might be a confounding variable. So someone who believes meat and cheese is healthy will be happier to eating the cheeseburger, but someone who doesn't believe meat and cheese is healthy, like vegans, will not look at that and be happy about the cheeseburger. So that's a confounding variable, and we want to take those out of the experiment. The only two variables we want in play are the dependent variable and the independent variable, and we want to try and take out or control for confounding variables. And again, an experiment is a deliberate manipulation. So we are trying to control the environment to every letter of the word. We're trying to control everything about the situation in which we're testing the subjects. So the only thing that is different between the experimental group and the control group, in theory, should be the independent variable. In every other regard, it should be exactly the same. So for example, they should both groups should be in a classroom or a laboratory. They should both be tested around the same time of day, around the same day of the week. And the only thing that should be different between the two is whether they get a cheeseburger or a vegan burger or a salad. That should be the only difference between the two. And the people in the both groups should be relatively similar or equal to each other. So, for example, we don't want a bunch of vegans in one group and a bunch of meat eaters in the other group. That's going to bias our results. Operational definition. Let me skip back a second. The really great thing about an experiment is that it can determine cause and effect relationships. Because we are controlling every single variable possible, except for the independent variable, any change in behavior, any change in the dependent variable, we can attribute to the independent variable. So if everything about the two groups is the same except the cheeseburger and the salad, if there's a difference in happiness, we can say that meat and cheese cause happiness. So operational definition. So this is very important to an experimental method. So it's a definition that you give to a variable. So a cheeseburger is an abstract idea. Happiness is an abstract idea. So what you want to do is you want to develop an operational definition. So for the purposes of this study, for this operation, this thing that I'm doing, I'm defining what a cheeseburger is. I'm defining what happiness is so that I can test it. And this is very important because you want to make sure you're testing the thing you're intending to test, if that makes sense. So, for example, you don't want to say meat and cheese and then give them a vegan cheeseburger. That's not a good operational issue. You're not actually testing the real thing. Same thing with happiness. You don't want to measure people's money, how much money they have in their account, because it's been proven for a long time that after $20,000 a year, money in your bank account does not make you more or less happy than anyone else. It has a very, very small effect on your actual happiness. So the difference between someone earning $30,000 and $300,000 is almost nothing. They're equally happy. So if I were to define happiness as how much money you have in your bank account, that would be inappropriate, and I could get a biased result, and my results would not be replicatable or reliable or trustworthy. In the case of parents or guardians, when you're testing minors, you want to get parents and guardians to sign a informed consent, and in general, you do want people to give you an informed consent, but we'll talk more about that when we talk about the ethics of research. Independent variable and dependent variable. Once again, the independent variable is the thing that you're manipulating. So in this case, with the cheeseburger and happiness, it's the meat and cheese is the independent variable. And dependent variable is happiness, the thing that we are measuring, the measured response or the behavior, the reaction from the subjects. So with the independent variable, the experimenter, me, the psychologist, I'm giving them a cheeseburger or I'm giving them a salad or a vegan burger. With the dependent variable, the subjects, the people in the experiment are telling me how happy they are. And it's called dependent variable because how happy they are depends on the independent variable. The independent variable doesn't depend on the dependent variable. That's why they have their names. Placebo effect, this is a possible thing that can happen in the results, and it can be best summarized as this. Something that should have no effect on you, for example, a sugar pill. If you have a headache, a sugar pill should not take your headache away. But if I tell you it's a real pain reliever, real medicine, placebo effect is when you take that sugar pill, you take that belief that it's real medicine and it cures your headache. And in fact, according to the FDA, 30% of the time, a sugar pill will cure a headache. Now, there's nothing about sugar that reduces headaches. It's the person's belief of what they think it will do for them that causes the effect. So to reduce the placebo effect, we can do a single blind study where they don't know if they're in the experimental group or the control group. And this is where a vegan burger and a cheeseburger would come in handy. They have no idea. To the naked eye, their group and the other group looks the same. Experimenter effect. So I, as the psychologist, could tamper with the results. Unintentionally or intentionally. So to reduce me from introducing bias into my experiment, I could do a double-blind study where not only do I not know which group the participants are going to, but I don't know uh, what treatment I'm giving them. And I can achieve this by having colleagues or confederates or assistants do the study for me, and they don't know what my purpose is, what my hypothesis is. I give them instructions that are non-biased. And that's it. That is it. We'll cover this material later. Thanks for watching, and see you guys in class.